Hey guys, welcome to the Box Social. It's Wednesday, October 9th, 2013. I'm Shane Goin, and I'm joined, as always, today by Brennan Hussung.
Hi there.
And it's been a while since we podcasted last. Months.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. There's been multiple reasons for lack of content. One of them being there's not really a lot to talk about, at least during the time that we were gone. And I guess secondly, we just haven't really been able to make schedules meet up. Real life gets in the way sometimes.
And it doesn't help that I'm a chronic procrastinator, so.
Mm-hmm.
But
we both suffer from that, so it's okay.
A lot of new games. A lot of stuff to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Well, beyond games too, we have OSs to discuss too.
Yeah, SteamOS.
You know, it's I consider it a big deal.
I think it is a really big deal. I think that's more of like a big deal probably like 5 years from now or 10 years from now when they really when they do something with that operating system, when they apply that kind of open source like Linux and they're able to get drivers for all the GPUs to work without hassle, with most hardware to work without hassle, then I don't know. I think it's got a real chance at overtaking Windows in the gaming scene. Probably half a decade from now.
Yeah, it'll be a while, but it's a nice step forward. But we don't have to lead off on that because that's a longer discussion, I feel like.
Yeah. And they also had a controller.
Yeah, it also had a controller. Also part of that thing something that needs to be discussed. But I'd honestly like to start off with things that you just missed, things we just haven't talked about. Well, I don't know. I don't think any of us covered The Last of Us for one. A lot. It's been a while, so a lot of things that have happened, gaming, like it was specifically related to games coming out and being played. I don't think that we've covered quite a few things, but the big things are Last of Us and Grand Theft Auto. So
yeah, I think those are the two largest, and for our small circle, Splinter Cell Blacklist.
Oh yes, then of course we have Splinter Cell. God, it's just been so long since we've talked about anything. It's hard to know it's hard to have a jumping off point, specifically with those three. Well, yeah, we'll do it back in time. We'll just go start.
I thought it was really good.
I thought it was really good too. It's so. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. I was going to say it's so late in the game now. It's like to say that is just redundant. It's a good game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fantastic. I think that at the end of the year that's probably going to be at the top of my list. So I don't think there's anything that's really topped that. Like I think GTA in many ways has kind of it's got the breadth, but I think as far as just keeping me totally engaged for the 16 hours that the campaign lasts.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think it took me like 14, 16 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, for that I was glued to it for 16 hours.
Oh yeah. I mean, its storyline has its share of moments that are pretty kind of cliched, but they're done in a good way, and for me it didn't take away from the experience.
Yeah, it probably has one of the best openings I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, that at this point I don't want to warn spoilers. It's been out for a while. But I mean, I'll say, hey, you know what, people, if you haven't played the game, this podcast will discuss a lot of shit you probably don't want to hear.
Yeah, I think the only thing that we won't discuss is like new stuff. Like we probably won't go over like the end of GTA or anything like that because that would be that'd be cruel. But
well, there's 3 endings of
games.
GTA, so we could go to the one and just be like, hey, people, this is choice blank blank blank. If you do this will happen. But anyway, digressing. Yeah, that Last of Us, the opening is fantastic. It's one of those openings that really astounded me because not many games have basically a tutorial in the first level that is both compelling and kind of teaches you without it teaching you.
Yeah.
Like the most lauded over level in history of gaming, at least that I know of, that teaches you without you knowing you're being taught, is the first level of Mega Man X on the highway. That is just like a much discussed level in the world of game design, being one of the best opening levels to a game in terms of how you learn to play the game without it telling you. Games nowadays are really, really bad at holding your hand so frequently. For me, it's infuriating. I really don't like it. I'm 25 years old. I'm not 2. I know how to handle a controller, and I'm pretty adept at realizing that most games carry the same kind of control scheme. So, to have an opening be very compelling and kind of throw you into how the game controls without, saying, "Hey, we think you're stupid," is a great thing.
Yeah, and atmospheric. It was immediately gripping. Like, you just know that something terrible is about to happen. I mean, of course, because the game, but it's just got like a great sense of tension, and I think that carried through the entire game.
It was a surprise too. I don't think anybody who played the game thought that was going to be the starting of the game at all, based on what had been shown. I mean, Naughty Dog's good about that, but and good developers just are good at that. They don't throw all they don't show the whole hand, but that
I'm glad
they
kept it a secret.
Was very surprising, and it was really certain moments that opening. I mean, you could talk about the opening forever, but just to point out key moments for me, you get in the car, you're playing his daughter's name's Ashley. Is that her name?
That sounds right.
Yeah, that's right. Or Elizabeth or something. Anyway. No, Elizabeth's BioShock. Anyway, Ashley, when you're playing her and you're in the back of the SUV and she's looking at the horrifying things that are happening around her, and when she moves around the car, everything feels way different than other things, which really leads to the engrossment factor for me. And then the game kicks off jumps ahead quite startlingly. I'm not saying that right, but
we're under the influence of alcohol. So
we are drinking beers as we're recording this, being as professional as always. It's at least you're not going to the hard liquor. A beer is very standard. But anyway.
I really liked it. I think that everything about that game was fantastic. The way that it handled stealth, the way that it handled the AI in combat. I thought it was a lot of fun to engage them. They're very mobile. The level design was fantastic. I mean, just across the board, it was completely enjoyable for those 16 hours. So I think for me, that's definitely going to be at the top of my list. And then the multiplayer, which was super surprising, and you and I dug into that.
We played our fair few sessions. I played a little bit more, definitely. That game's multiplayer, Last of Us' multiplayer is it's not my favorite multiplayer of the year anymore, because I've gotten past the initial issues, which we'll talk about, of Grand Theft Auto's multiplayer, to play it very much in depth, and it is extremely engrossing once you get into that. But the multiplayer before I played Grand Theft Auto was my favorite of the year. I'm too much of a fan of high punishment games, and the multiplayer in Last of Us is built very much on punishing you for doing silly things. But on the reverse side of that, when you do what would be deemed as stupid, heroic things, sometimes that pays off, and when it pays off, it's really, really, really exciting.
Yeah, I thought you made a great point a while back when you kind of drew a parallel between that and Counter-Strike. And I was like, yeah, I totally get that. There's a high risk and reward to every engagement in that multiplayer. And I thought that was, I don't know, it's got that same kind of feeling. Like Counter-Strike, when I played that, I had a sense of tension, which added to my excitement in each one of those matches. I mean, I've played the shit out of Counter-Strike. So having something that emulates that feeling while still being entirely different was pretty exceptional. And it wasn't something that I expected. Like, I didn't think anything about the Last of Us multiplayer before I played it.
They didn't say anything about the multiplayer till 2 months, 3 months before the game came out.
Yeah, very much like it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we also have multiplayer in this game that we've only been showing a single player of. And I watched some videos of it, and to be honest, when they first showed it, I was like, well, this looks interesting, but I didn't really get it. I think jumping from the single player game to the multiplayer games really honestly enhanced it.
Like
and for
taking
people
your
who buy
skills?
The Last of Us, they're going to be playing the single player. Well, it's not just the skills. It's you in the single player. The encounters in the single player are very much built around a struggle. If you're playing on higher difficulties, at least I've tried to play on a higher difficulty. I'm a big fan of Cormac McCarthy's The Road, which was an extreme, but very much a
Influence on The Last of Us?
Took influence. Yeah, why can't I come up with the word influence? That
Because of
book
alcohol.
was pretty much the influence. Yeah, because of alcohol was pretty much the influence for the game in terms of its art style and direction and narrative. So. That was I always tried to play on the hard difficulties because you want to be a scrounger. Like you want to have things that that game's difficult for good reasons. But kind of like Dark Souls is difficult for good reasons. Last of Us on higher difficulties is kind of the way to play it in my mind, just because for me is when I get the most payoff for the world that they're putting you in. And the multiplayer was the exact same. It's even more that you have to, scrounge for supplies off of people you take down, scrounge for supplies in crates you find, and build things on the fly in the middle of combat. And sometimes when you're building these things, like you're like, yeah, this is what I need, but you're only ever going to get, 1, 2 of these things at most. And you've got to make sure they count. And if you waste them, I mean, it's a real blow to you
Yeah.
as a player. And it's a real blow to your team. So that was kind of that was the part that I liked about it the most is it's just super, it's very intense. It's very tense. I don't think I've played a multiplayer game in a long time that had me as white knuckled as that one did constantly. Yeah. Like every round it was that.
Absolutely. And I think, let's see, to move the conversation forward in time, after The Last of Us, I guess the next 2 large releases, if I recall correctly, is Saints Row 4 and Splinter Cell Blacklist.
Wildly different on the spectrum.
Yeah. That was an interesting week getting both of those. Loved them. Love both of those games.
Yeah.
Saints Row 4 was fantastic. I'm glad that we got the PC versions as opposed to the Xbox 360 or PS3 versions, because I hear that they had pretty terrible performance issues.
Some performance problems, yeah. I mean, nothing that would keep anybody from playing the game, but they were issues enough that people had to cite them in pretty much every review that was written. So.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, it was bad enough in Saints Row 3. Like I played through that initially on Xbox 360, and I thought the performance was pretty poor. Like it would tank at odd times. Sometimes it was when there was action on screen, but it doesn't look like the type of game that should have that kind of slowdown. It doesn't have that kind of sheen to it. The quality of the presentation, but Saints Row 4 was on PC was fucking awesome.
Yeah,
it was essentially Crackdown, which was a great surprise. Like, I mean, I knew that it had superpowers, but I didn't know that it would emulate that feel so closely, especially with like the skill orbs.
Yeah, with the orb searching, which as soon as they introduced that, I probably spent far too much of my own time doing that instead of doing the actual missions in the game.
Oh,
but I think
did you do that too? Like for your first round, like, oh my god, I got the open world, now I'm gonna grab all these.
Yeah, now I'm gonna get all the orbs that are in the area and get my jumping powers and running powers as high as I possibly can before doing anything else in the game. Hell yes, I did.
I thought it was kind of neat how it trivialized its own combat, in a way, and it didn't try to like balance the playing field. Really, it kind of just let you play that game as an overpowered killing machine.
I always felt like when I was playing that the developers at Volition just made a game, or like, we welcome you to come in and break it. Like that was the idea behind it. It's like, we're gonna make a game that we want you to break, and we're even gonna make what appears to be the game breaking part of the gameplay. Which led to a lot of laughs. That game was just astoundingly creative, also, in a lot of the things that it did. Saints Row 3 was as well, but Saints Row 3 is more of like, let's just be as over the top as we can. Whereas in Saints Row 4, it's like, okay, we've already pretty much gone as over the top as we can with superpowers, so let's see how creative we can be with its structure, which sometimes were not so much hits as they were misses sometimes for me, but the things that they hit on that were definitely hits were great.
Yeah, Saints Row 4 was a lot of hard swings, and I think I don't know, I didn't like the fact that it didn't change cities, like what they did with Steelport to change it up a little bit, especially because I recently I replayed Saints Row 3 like right before moving into Saints Row 4, just so I could kind of like recap. And yeah, it was really weird transitioning into 4 because it's not a particularly attractive city in 3, and I don't think it's anywhere close to as well designed as like a Rockstar city.
No, it very much feels cookie cutter. That city's not very. I didn't like it in 3, and I don't like it in 4 either. It's not really any different.
Yeah, so
it didn't really change anything.
There was like a lingering complaint that I had, to where it's like they didn't really change the map. It felt rushed in that aspect. I thought they did a lot with that though. Like they did more with the game than I expected, considering that they did reuse terrain. And I had a lot of fun. But once I finished it, it's like I'm good. Like I know that they've got the season pass and extra DLC, but I'm not sure how quickly I really want to jump back into that. Like I feel like I got my fill.
Yeah, I played the game till I think if I booted it up right now, I'm at like 98% complete with the game. I went through as much as I possibly could. I mean, I really enjoyed the game. I wouldn't. It's funny I say I enjoy it so much, but it was a different kind of enjoyment I got from that one. Like it was a stupid enjoyment, which is I think everyone says when they play the game. But like Last of Us was a game that I played and like left like a really big lasting impression. Whereas Saints Row 4 is the game, and I'm like, why wasn't this game around when I was 7 years old? Like I felt like. Like, that was the game that, like, really, you just do really stupid shit. It was like Rampage from the arcade games, like, way back in the day. It was like that to me. Like, it was that kind of, like, ridiculous game I'm going to pick up and play for a few hours and probably not touch again for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really good kind of stupid.
Yeah.
And then Splinter Cell Blacklist, which came out was that day and date?
Yeah. Yeah, it was the same day. I think so.
Yeah, I love that as well. That genuinely surprised the hell out of me. Like I saw the multiplayer like trailer beforehand, and I was like, I am geared up to really enjoy Spies versus Mercs again, because I've got lots of great memories playing with you and the other guys, and just loving that asymmetrical multiplayer, the tension of that particular breed of confrontation. And I don't know, it's so different. But that was like the part of the game that I was most looking forward to. And while I enjoyed that portion of the game the most, I was really surprised to find out the single player was much more than I had given it initial credit for. It was that campaign is probably second only to Chaos Theory in my mind, which is my favorite game in the series so far.
I think Chaos Theory is pretty much everyone's. If you are a Splinter Cell like longtime fan, that game is still probably everyone's favorite in terms of single player. But yeah, Blacklist did a very much an astoundingly good job at capturing capturing what was the essence of Chaos Theory single player. I still had we've had discussions about this during the time that we could have our mini discussions when it first came out about the single player. That I thought that the single player was, while very good, I don't think that it fleshed out the Chaos Theory idea as well, only because I felt like Blacklist single player was kind of a continuous room to room game, whereas and the rooms you went in were very large and you could do what you wanted in those rooms, but it was like a secular, like the singular environment at one after the other. Whatever you did in that environment did not affect what you had just done in the environment beforehand. And yes. That was like, I didn't really dig that as much because in Chaos Theory, of course, that game single player was always loved because you were put in a place, and that place was very much changed based on how you came at it. And that game was also known for being extremely difficult because of that. That kind of difficulty was missing from Blacklist. Not that I'm like some dude who wants, I need every game to be stupid difficult, but it was a different kind of difficult.
Yeah.
That Blacklist doesn't have. But the Blacklist single player, I'm nitpicking at it honestly because it's still very good for a game that didn't have a lot of publicity over the 6 months prior to it coming out. It had a ton, like, when it was first announced, like, a year and a half before it was released, which always weirded me out. I'm like, this game's not even coming out for a year. Like, it
looked like a shooter, too.
Yeah.
Their initial, like, showing of the game, he was in Afghanistan in broad daylight. He was murking fools left and right. And people were worried that, like, I like Conviction, okay. I didn't think Conviction was a bad game. I didn't think it was an especially good game either. But I enjoyed it enough. Like, I didn't hate it. But Conviction had a speed to it and an aggressiveness to it that, while you were using stealth to take out people, it was very much in service to a more military shooter sort of pace. And when they showed Blacklist for the first time, that's what it looked to be following, to where it's like, okay, we've taken Conviction and we've gone all out with that kind of mindset.
Which that didn't make any sense to me, because then after that they immediately were like, well, I think this is obviously just because of fan reaction, but I didn't really understand why they didn't notice that they should publicize the game as being this kind of open-ended game where you could do what you wanted, because from the Convictions, like when Conviction came out, everyone blasted it for not being more open-ended, and you're basically forced to use these lethal techniques in the game, which didn't make any sense for Sam's character, but also really detracted from the players to play the game. Like me, I play the game to not even touch anybody.
Yeah, you didn't have a variety in the gameplay.
Yeah. Well, Blacklist does have that, but it just didn't. They didn't say anything about that when it was first shown.
It's so weird. I didn't get that, but I was glad to be genuinely surprised. I'm cool with that. I was like, okay, this is a really good Splinter Cell game. And then the multiplayer, which is almost a completely separate game, is so wildly different than the single player. But pulls across some of the best aspects of it, especially the movement and the speed of the takedowns. So for me, just to give a little bit of backstory, I guess I started playing Splinter Cell multiplayer pretty hardcore back in Pandora Tomorrow on the original Xbox, and that might have been the first console game that I took online. I'm pretty sure that was. So
it was worth it.
Yeah, I had a phenomenal time with that. I had a phenomenal time with Chaos Theory, even though it was kind of clunky and weird to get into. I really, really enjoyed it, and even Double Agent, which was really different. But this was kind of like a neat meeting of kind of like the more tactical and slower version of the multiplayer that I had seen previously, but kind of like Blacklist as a whole kind of kicked it up and made it this amalgamation of like the new ideas and the old ideas. And I really dig it. We've spent a lot of time in that. And that's probably my most played multiplayer game this year, outside of maybe Masley multiplayer.
Yeah, I will. To give another bit of extra, also that you were talking about how that that was probably the first game you put online. That was the first game that got pretty much everybody that's involved in this podcast to get to know each other, was Chaos Theory's multiplayer. Yeah. So for people that listen, this game's multiplayer is something that we have been very vocal about in our discussions amongst each other in our gameplay time. It's just been spent playing this game. So if we spend a little too much time talking about, not too much time, but more time talking about Splinter Cell, it's because we fucking love it. So, it's just deal with it.
Near to our heart.
Yeah, you just got to deal with it.
I was so happy to finally play that, and I was so happy that it met my expectations. Because I was ready to be let down, and instead it was like I wound up enjoying it, and I would really love for them to release a map pack.
Yeah, I would too. The thing is, we have it on the computer, so the community is a little more tight knit, which comes with its own interesting caveats. One of them being everybody, so if they're you're going to have a match that's going to be difficult, you're going to have a match that's going to be a steamroll, which mostly for us to toot our own horn ends up being a steamroll most of the time. But I think that Zygens, who's not able to be here tonight, and Zygens and I were in the top 100 for playing, and then as much you didn't play as much as we did in the initial run, so you weren't able to keep up high enough. But if you did, you'd easily be up there with us. I mean, I think our win rate together was 88%.
Good lord,
it was
that
stupid.
sounds right though.
It was dumb. A lot of people when they first played the multiplayer, they really attacked it. Most of these people are the same people that started playing Chaos Theory, and they wanted more of the Chaos Theory tactical thing. The problem with Chaos Theory's multiplayer, which is the problem that at least I had with it, was as great as the depth was of that game. You had people that would get so good at that game that you couldn't win. It was literally one of the most impossible things to do. It had such a steep learning curve. Its learning curve might be up there in difficulty with Dota, with games like Dota, in terms of multiplayer depth. I mean, it was an extreme learning curve. They took a lot of the learning curve out. It's still a difficult game if you don't play it kind of the way it's meant to be played. There is some room for kind of being wild and doing some stupid shit every once in a while, and it can pay off. And I kind of like that in a game, but I think they hit the good note between being very tactical and then being also a little more inviting.
yeah, I agree, and I think it was also nice on their part for them to release two seemingly similar but very different multiplayer modes. With classic mode, which mirrors more of the Chaos Theory experience, to where it's a 2-on-2 multiplayer match. The maps are darker. You got to play stealthier. Mercs is I don't know.
It becomes a scarier experience.
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking.
It was like old school. Yeah, it's like old school Chaos Theory. As much as people love being the gun-toting mercs that can destroy everything they want to, like when you're playing them in classic mode, it is just as nerve-wracking as it's always been, and even actually more so due to how much more lethal a spy is compared to how a spy used to be. A spy in Chaos Theory used to be very much more defensive. A spy in this game is very much more aggressive, which can pose some problems for the person playing a merc if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, and I think that they hit a pretty good balance. Like, it doesn't seem to be too weighted in favor of one side to another. And then they have the Blacklist mode, which we've wound up playing more of because we usually have a full crew online, to where it's 4-on-4 multiplayer, and it's got essentially character building that mirrors like a Call of Duty or something, to where you can pick your loadout, you can add attachments to specific weaponry, and kind of tweak your character a little bit to maximize your performance in one particular aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also been a lot of fun. Like, right now, it's like I don't even know which mode I like more. Like, I really have a great time when we have close to, or if not a full team online, just run around and wreaking havoc.
Mm-hmm.
And it still feels like Splinter Cell multiplayer. And then, classic mode is great, to where it's just two of us. And that really emphasizes the coordination and teamwork more so than just about any other multiplayer on the planet.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to choose kind of a side if you had to on which game mode's better. Both of them have their best traits. I like Blacklist because we have usually a larger crew, and the Blacklist mode also is fun because you get to kind of pick roles and what you do for your team. It's a little less so and more important on the merc side. It's much more important on the spy side to know kind of what each role is. But yeah, it's a good mode, and there are some problems with it. It was recently patched for people that do play the game, that have had some niggling issues. There was a very large patch that patched. This is like 2 days ago. It patched spawn camping problems that the game does have. It helped fix those and a few other things. I haven't tested these out to see what these changes are like, but I'm sure that the other patches they've issued did fix problems that they said it fixed. So I trust them that whatever they just added in terms of fixing works. So if you haven't picked up the game in a while because of certain issues, pick it up again, play it. Hopefully you'll meet us online. We promise we won't hurt you too bad. And it's fun. You should play it.
So moving forward, well, I don't know if I should move forward quite yet because we've got a whole slew of other games that released this year that we haven't talked about. So starting off, I'm thinking I'm going through my Steam library right now. Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons is one we both played.
Yeah, we can talk about that quickly. That was you completed it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess really quick off the bat, we could both say that what our verdict is in the game. I loved it.
I did too. Yeah.
I don't love it as much as every other critic on the planet seems to love it, but yeah. I still think it's very, very creative and ingenious in a lot of ways. And then I think that in its kind of way it tells its story, it kind of falls flat for me. Not that I'm a heartless bastard. I have, the idea behind the game being a story about two brothers is, I have a brother. It is something I can relate to. Having my brother not be, nearby to me all the time is always something that I think about also. So it is something that I'm not a heartless asshole. Schindler's List makes me cry. So, but I didn't find the storyline as dramatically compelling as other people have put it.
I would agree with that. I think it didn't really get to me, but I really appreciated the beauty in the environments. Like, I thought that artistically it was pretty striking. The game took me, I don't know, 3 hours maybe to be 3.5, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a trifle of an experience. I mean, not to dismiss the game. It was well designed. It had some pretty smart puzzles. I mean, you play it with two characters using one controller, one character assigned to each analog stick with their actions assigned to the triggers. And the variety of the tasks that you perform using that simple control scheme is pretty broad.
It messes with your head too, that control scheme, when you first start using it. I don't know how many times I would play it where one would just go off in this other direction and be like, oh, I'm not pressing the right direction on the right stick.
Did you ever get that sense of to where it's you just stopped thinking about it and it kind of worked?
Yeah. Every once in a while it clicks. When it clicks, it's awesome too. But it's the fun. One part I did like about the game is, as much as sometimes it's confusing, I liked feeling stupid sometimes when doing the control. It's nice to play something that I have to think about, which I haven't played in a while.
Yeah, I think overall though, I think the thing that struck out to me the most was the presentation. So the story didn't get to me. I thought that sometimes the sound blurbs of the two characters, the two main characters, were annoying. So that kind of detracted from the experience because they don't speak English. They're speaking a tongue kind of like Ico or Shadow of the Colossus, to where it's a made up language that's kind of like Simlish. And so they pantomime things to one another, and you're mostly getting the story based off of movement of real physical acting, and so you get repeated sound bites over and over again, up to where it's one brother calls to another brother, or laughter or grunting, and I don't know, that part got to me, and it was noticeable. So. Yeah. And that was kind of weird, because that's not something that usually sticks out to me in a game. It's kind of an unusual complaint, but for some reason it got to me. But I think the music was fantastic. I think the art design, the going through the battlefield of the giants and stuff,
that was awesome.
So visually striking. That was going through a painting or something.
Yeah, that part was great. The boat sequence where you row the boat was through the whales was awesome to me too. Yeah. It was a very, very well paced short experience. I very much commend the designers for how well they paced the game.
Yeah. Starbreeze.
Yeah. Weird.
Oddly enough.
Yeah, weird indie game from Starbreeze, well developers.
So Starbreeze also released Payday 2.
You have to jump to. That's also kind of a surprise for me. I was not a fan of Payday 1, so.
I haven't played as much as that as I want to. I'd really like to come around and play more of that towards the end of the year. But from what I played, I enjoy it quite a bit. It didn't blow me away or anything, but I liked it more than I was expecting to.
I mean, for the price that it came out, it was $30 when it came out. It was worth the price, and the stuff they've added to the game with bug fixing and content additions and some balancing changes have really I mean, for the most part, have been good. Some people, it had some patches that people are very vocal about hating, but luckily the developers who are making it are very, very much enthusiastic about, listening to the people who play their game. So they've mostly fixed pretty much any issue anybody had with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it seems great.
Yeah, I've probably put in 20 hours to the experience. I've loved it. It's a little, I've stopped playing just because it runs into a grind situation, or even the higher difficulties of the missions you completed aren't as compelling. I think that they've recently balanced the difficulties, so maybe it's worth me going back in and playing some more of it for a while until they've added some new content. But yeah, it was for the $30. I recommend it. It was good. If you're looking for a cheaper multiplayer game to buy that's in the vein of Left 4 Dead, except you're robbing banks a la Heat, most famous Michael Mann film, and you enjoy being Val Kilmer with his ridiculous blonde ponytail for a couple of hours, totally worth it.
And while not released this year, but purchased at around the same time, this one really surprised me, was Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed.
Oh man, yeah.
I know we're really jumping around. We got a lot to cover.
All of it's a lot to cover. We're trying to get we're not trying to be too content stuffed, but yeah, that's it. It's a racing game that actually is in contention to be almost better than a Mario Kart game.
See, I don't even know if it's almost better. I think for this, I've had so much fun playing it. So much more than I can remember having than Mario Kart since I was a kid. And that would be like, the 64 era? And I think Mario Kart 64 is usually looked down on as like... That was my initial entry into the series.
Yeah.
So, but most people kind of dismiss that one. But I had a lot of fun in parties with it.
You've got that mistaken.
Oh,
64
really?
is the one that everyone loves. Yeah, 64 is the one that everyone loves. The one that's looked down on is when they implemented. It was in, what was it? It was the Mario Kart for the Wii. For the Wii.
Okay.
When they did the one on the Wii, they changed the sliding mechanics. This is really some nerdy game, like Mario Kart fan shit.
Bring it.
We're talking about kart racers now. People love Mario Kart 64 because the sliding mechanics, where you would do your slide and you do the boost. You kind of flick the analog stick the opposite direction and get your boost. It was a technique. It was something you had to be good at to get the boosts in. So the people that would play the game for hours on end would master the slides and how they get the most speed out of their turns. And it was this really cool technical experience. Mario Kart DS came out, and they made the sliding so easy to do, and this is their fault. They made it so simple to do, where you literally just had to tap the D-pad the opposite direction. It wasn't like holding it a certain amount of time. You just had to tap it. So what people would do is they would do a technique called snaking, where they would constantly be switching sides on their slides. They would get, slide to the left, get their boost, and slide to the right, get their boost, and they would basically be going straight. They would do it so quickly. But they would have a constant boost. Well, because of this, they got rid of that whole boost technique in the Mario Kart for the Wii, and that game's boost technique is built more on you hitting jumps and doing tricks, and then just holding the slide to the turns. So the longer you hold a slide, the more boost you get out of it. So it becomes and the slide doesn't really. It's much easier to kind of maneuver the slide, so you can retain your speed and you can get your turns better. So the technique is just. It's devoid of the technique that made 64 so popular.
So it lost interesting competitive mechanics.
Yes, it lost interesting competitive mechanics. It's still a fantastic game. Fucking love Mario Kart Wii and any other Mario Kart game that has come out since then that I've played. They're great games. But in terms of its depth, 64 is looked at as the best one, just because... Well, that and the SNES one won because the SNES one was the first one. But 64 is looked at by a lot of fans is the best one because its technical depth and its competitive side was a lot more than the subsequent releases.
Yeah, I hear that.
So quick, drive down history fact lane on
Mario Kart 101
on the kart racing genre.
Come to the box social to be filled in.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the rules about that. But Sonic's game, hated the first kart racer they came out with. I played a demo of that, thought it was totally stupid. Then I played this game and I was like, whoa, this is way more interesting. And I think that's because they kind of took a note from Diddy Kong Racing, where you kind of have these, ability to fly or doing the boat and then be in the car. But the difference is it does it, on the fly throughout the race at certain points, which is cool. Well, not on the fly, but just in certain checkpoints along the track.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
And then having changing tracks, which I thought was really engaging. How to where it's like one lap will be entirely different from a second lap. Well, not entirely different, but to where it's like they'll change a quarter of the track at a time. Usually to do with like some kind of crazy event that's going on. That's themed to the games. And I know one of the first things that really engaged me was that it's such fan service for all things Sega.
Oh yeah.
So
it's good fan service too. It's not crappy fan service.
Yeah. Which I didn't expect. Sonic has been dead to me for a while. I would be okay if Sonic were to go away. But with this, I thought it was fantastic. It was kind of like a run through a Sega theme park with all my old favorites, including like the Panzer Dragoon course. Like starting that for the first time, and then hearing the trumpets from the original Panzer Dragoon opening. I thought that was
super nostalgic.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, they got me. And
they had the Skies of Arcadia level too. I know you're a big Skies fan, so that was probably my favorite level. Yeah, that's probably my favorite level in the game. And the only character I use is Vice. As soon as I got him in the game, it's the only one I started racing around with.
Man.
Yeah, Vice is the only one I use.
I really like on the Steam version getting the Team Fortress cart as well.
Yeah, you have the Steam version. I had the 360 version. I just recently traded it in. But yeah, I did have that. The Team Fortress characters they put on Steam were kind of a really awesome last minute. It seemed last minute, it wasn't, but kind of funny little addition.
I'm so glad they're in. Yeah.
They also added in the PC version, they added the Company of Heroes people as well because Sega acquired Relic.
I think the Shogun. There's a character from Shogun Total War as well.
Shogun guy. Yeah, there's a Shogun guy in that too on the PC version. So you get to play a tank commander from World War II, which is weird.
Why the hell not?
Why not? And the Shogun guy.
Well, in other games, let's see. I'm going off the top of my head. So is there one that sticks out to you that we've missed?
So you just kind of rattled off one I wasn't even remotely thinking about to even talk about. So I will load off one just that I will note off. So we'll end the rambling on the games. If that's okay, we'll go to the next big thing, which will have a lot more to discuss about, which is GTA. But just to end with it, you had bought me for my birthday and the follow-up to Amnesia.
Yes.
Which I still have not finished because I'm a giant sissy when it comes to these games. I have a history of this. I remember when I first played Legend of Zelda when I was like Ocarina of Time when I was like 8, and I was terrified of water in video games, and it was because of Mario and that Mario 64 and that big fucking eel. It scared the shit out of me when I was little.
Dire Docks.
Yeah, it scared the shit out of me when I was little because it wasn't. Did not know about that eel because of course back in the day we didn't have tons of trailers and gameplay of shit that I would follow to like learn about a game. I saw Mario, I was like, I want it. Anyway, when I played that level, the eel came out of nowhere, scared the living piss out of me, and I never touched the game again. At least never touched that level again. I had to have my father and my brother beat it. I'm now past that issue of water in games, but
it was a while ago.
But just like to give an example, I'm very much a sissy when it comes to games. I get engrossed in them easily. So I've never beaten Amnesia: The Dark Descent. I've gotten very far into it over a course of a very, very long time of probably 15-minute gameplay sessions, because that's about as much as my heart rate can take. So you bought this one for me. And I've probably played an hour and a half, 2 hours of it. I hear the game's like around 3 to 4 hours, like 4 hours, 5 hours long.
Okay, so that's much shorter than the original.
Yeah, it's much shorter than the other one. It's made by the Chinese Room, which they made Dear Esther, which I'm familiar with. I have Dear Esther. I'm a fan of playing kind of offbeat indie games. Dear Esther was very much just very linear story experience that didn't make a lot of sense. It was more like an art project. Another game that's very much just an art project, but kind of a bit fun to mess around in is Proteus. But changing subjects. But back to A Machine for Pigs. Machine for Pigs it's made by the guys who did Dear Esther, so it follows the storyline part of Amnesia more, which there's a payoff to that and a negative side to that. Negative side to it being the game makes no fucking sense whatsoever, and a large portion of it. I feel like in the time that I've played the game, I could skip all the logs that you pick up, and I won't miss anything because those logs literally make no sense at all.
Why? Because they loop into the first game, or because it's just nonsensical?
No, they're just nonsensical. Like, they're just completely nonsensical. Like, every once in a while, you'll hear a character's name that's mentioned that you've remember hearing while you're playing this random dude in like 18th century London. But they just don't make any sense. The only part of the story that makes sense is what you see through just progressing, not through reading anything that's picked up. And that was in Amnesia, The Dark Descent, those logs actually made sense. They actually told a large portion of backstory. But with this, I feel like they're nonsensical. They're just kind of dumb. I don't feel like they have any place in the actual storyline that I'm seeing before my eyes. It's like the namesake, you play a guy who has amnesia, he wakes up in a big mansion, and it starts out with children. You're following your children, which is inherently creepy. It's kind of a tired tradition in horror games to have children laughing, but it's creepy and they do it well. Most of the reason it's creepy is because the game's audio direction is insanely good. It is one of the best audio. It is some of the best audio direction for a horror game. It's the same way in
the original Amnesia.
Oh, it's better than the original one, though.
Wow.
And the reason it's better is because a lot of the direction in Amnesia I felt like was just ambient noises for the sake of having ambient noises to creep you out. Whereas in Machine for Pigs, the ambient noises are just the noises themselves are inherently creepy. They're not used to be creepy. Whether it's hearing organs in a church that are slightly off key and like really dissonant. Hence using the term dissonant, they sound slightly off. To clanks and different things, like they're not unorganic noises. Whereas a lot of the noises in Dark Descent were creepy and they did scare me. I felt like they were just put there to scare you. Whereas the direction in Machine for Pigs
they're kind of go for like a Cthulhian side of the horror. So I mean, you can you get that kind of like overwhelming sense that. Kind of like the natural world is scared of whatever the fuck is in that castle.
Yeah.
Or is being controlled by. Like, I remember, I think it's early on in Amnesia to where you went outside. I'm sorry, this is totally derailed, but to where you went outside and the trees bent towards you as if they were coming to get you.
Mm-hmm.
So it, like, scenes like that kind of exemplified, like, the sound design for that is what made that scene kind of startling. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. To where it's like this one, it's like you get a sense that there's like sound in another room, and it makes more sense than what's going on in Amnesia, which is just kind of like a chill ambient score that's there just to amplify horror. Mm-hmm. And this one is more like, okay, this is it's there to amplify horror, but there's more of a logic behind it.
Yeah, it and just to like quick notes about the game, like before we kind of care off of it, it deviates from kind of some of the ideas of Amnesia. One of them being there's no inventory system in the game, there's no oil management, and there's no sanity meter.
So do you like that? Because for me, outside of the sanity meter, I think not having the oil that's fine by me.
Yeah, it's okay for me. I really didn't like the sanity meter. I didn't like balancing that in Amnesia, and I actually like the oil in The Dark Descent. I kind of don't like that that's not in the game, just because that element was like just really this added extra level of stress to playing the game, where you had to manage that properly. But if you turned your light off, you weren't able to see far enough ahead of you to see what the fuck might be just there to grab you. The difference in Machine for Pigs, which the game's to me is scary because I'm a giant sissy. For a lot of people, though, the game is not as scary as Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Most of that has to do with the fact that since it's made by the Chinese Room guys, they don't focus so much on the gameplay part; they focus more on the story part. So the puzzles play more of a role, and the immersion of you in the world plays more of a role. The actual creatures that hunt you to kill you, they exist and they will do it, but it's a lot easier to outrun them. And the one thing that happens when you get near them, and this is kind of a spoiler, not really, but you you have to kind of understand why it does this, and you eventually do. But your lantern flickers on and off when they're nearby, which can which scares the shit out of me personally. I hate that. It really freaks me out. It's like, oh crap, there's one right near me, and I don't know where he is. Then you'll hear like the pig squeal, and it's like, oh fuck.
Son of a bitch.
I mean, you listened to me play the game once on
it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was funny. I joke a lot about how do I exercise beyond it, like how do I exercise when I don't feel like exercising? I get in my car and I go drive in front of a police officer for a while and see how I do. Usually my heart rate goes bumps out of my chest because I just hate driving in front of police officers. I'm gonna start playing Amnesia, because literally all I have to do is just go into a room and hear a squeal, and my heart rate will literally leap out of my chest. I have to stop playing the game. When I do stop playing the game, I literally have to stop being around anything for a while. I have to control myself because my heart rate's so out of control. That's how bad these games do to me. But so far to end it, so far of what I played, I like it. It's just not. It's definitely not as long. It seems to be not as long as Dark Descent, and it's I don't know. It's just you don't feel as threatened by the creatures, I think, as a whole. But in terms of their lethality, I still hate them and don't want to see them in front of my face because they're terrifying. But they're not as lethal. It's not a bad game though.
Is it just because it's not as scary because you've experienced these scares before and so you kind of know what to expect?
Hell no.
Okay.
No, it's not. It doesn't seem as scary to me just because the lethality that the monsters had in the Dark Descent is not as prevalent as you feel safer in Machine for Pigs.
Okay. So I guess the next topic is yeah, I mean I've heard it's not as good as the first one. So and that seems to be kind of consistent across the board, to where it's there are some things that it does well, and then there are some things that it does not do well. Mm-hmm. So it seems like it is a less stressful experience than the first Amnesia. By removing the need to constantly restock on lantern fuel, and not penalizing you for hiding.
Yeah, defining less stressful though is very much an opinion, a personal opinion. Because as I've described, for me to play that game literally causes heart problems. So yeah, literally nothing can happen in that game, and I'll shit myself.
Grand Theft Auto.
Anyway, yeah, GTA time. The actual contender to talk about. That's what everyone's talking about. Smashing records left and right. It's now I think 7 world records smashed.
Yeah.
It's
7.
It's good.
It's
everyone
popular.
does. Yeah, it's pretty popular. It's pretty fucking fantastic. It's I want to start off by saying I was not interested in buying the game, honestly, until a couple of months before it came out. Just because I had seen the online trailer. And since that's pretty much the only reason, not the only reason, but the main reason I bought the game, I'll let you should talk about the single player, and I will talk about the multiplayer. I've spent the most time in it, I feel like, anyway. So you should talk with the single player.
Well, I really enjoyed all the previous GTAs that I played. I didn't play the handheld ones. I didn't play Chinatown Wars, even though I hear that's fantastic. But this has got to be my favorite GTA. That being said, I've got a few caveats to where there are elements of this game that I wish that Rockstar had streamlined, but all in all, I think it's an extremely well designed and extremely fun experience from start to finish. That is better paced and has more variety than just about any game that I have ever played. It mechanically, it's not super sharp in a lot of the actions that you take part in. I don't think the shooting is fantastic. I think the shooting is passable. The driving is greatly improved from Grand Theft Auto 4. And I actually kind of like the driving in Grand Theft Auto 4. I'm weird.
You like Vaseline tires?
I did. I kind of got used to it, so I got good at it. So it wasn't a hindrance in Grand Theft Auto 4 after the first hour or two. So for that, I was able to pull off a lot of cool kart chases. this one kind of seemed like it was melding the semi-realistic nature of car handling in 4, which was way too harsh, with kind of the older, more arcadey feel of the first 3 polygonal GTAs. The narrative follows 3 characters, of course, and I thought the mechanic for jumping in between those characters was fantastic. And it was a great way to kind of like jump you between mission to mission, to where it's like if you're way out in the countryside when you end a mission, then you can jump back downtown and kind of like dig into something else. Like you very rarely had to like really like suss out what you need to do next, or travel long distances to get to the next mission objective. Though that did happen, and it's something to where I don't know. You can call a cab, and you can take a cab ride and then pay extra money to skip to a destination, and that's kind of something that I wish that I didn't have to do. Like I don't think I needed to sit and wait for that. So really, I didn't use a cab. I just drove. Like I just did not have the patience.
But that's the I want to say though, it didn't have any fast travel mechanics. A lot of things that the game GTA does not have other open world games start to use. I think that they made a smart decision not to include some of those things, though, because the world that they've created is one of the most hyper-detailed, most well-realized worlds in an open world environment I've probably ever seen.
I think it is the most. I don't think there's anything that rivals that. So far, you've taken a massive team of incredibly talented, obsessive compulsive game designers and given them a blank check in 5 years to create something truly outstanding, and they have achieved that. So I think as far as designing a world, I think Rockstar is second to none. I think this is one of the best displays of open world use ever. There's a lot to do in this world. You can really take your time and enjoy it. You can enjoy the scenery. You can enjoy just driving around the countryside and doing all sorts of stupid shit, kind of like what I used to do in San Andreas. Like, just dicking around is awesome. Mm-hmm. I still wish that it was more convenient. Like, I feel like they almost designed this game in a bubble. And so there are a few elements that kind of nag at me, and that's that I don't think that each mission rides as high as every other mission, to where it's like there's an ebb and flow to the pacing of this, and I think sometimes it can get a little tiring. For me personally, I felt like there were plenty of missions that I was kind of bored with. I didn't care that much about, but whatever disappointment I had in those missions were quickly washed away when they did something truly exciting and outstanding. And I wish that there were more of those than the seemingly filler missions. So when I look back at the game, I don't really remember those missions. At the time, it bugged me. So, Rockstar succeeded. This is an easy contender for Game of the Year and an easy contender for Game of the entire generation. There were still things that I wish that they would have done better, and my complaints are extremely minor. But
that's
overall,
a fun
I really
thing
enjoyed
to say, though, that all complaints about this game were pretty much the most minor things.
Yeah.
There really isn't anything big. It's the most minor shit.
Yeah,
certainly. But you definitely can nitpick it, though.
You can, yeah, sure. But it's one of those things to where it's like everything is so good that it's like whenever there is a flaw like that, it stands out harsher than it would for most other games.
Definitely.
So as far as the narrative goes, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the main character. I didn't think that it was particularly awesome, and like it never really surprised me. I kind of wish that you had gone after.
What do you mean in terms of not surprising? What do you mean?
There was no real twists or turns. I never felt like any of the characters were threatened.
Of the story. Okay, yeah. Okay. I thought you ment in terms of mission structure. I'm like, I was surprised plenty by the mission structure.
Yeah, there was some stuff in that was pretty fucking awesome. But nothing that really, like, I don't know. There were no real unexpected twists or turns. It kind of felt by the book in a way, in terms of how the narrative played out. Even when you're given a choice near the end of the game, I pretty much knew how that was going to play out. And I was satisfied with how that game ended, but it didn't like exceed my expectations in as far as storytelling. Except maybe I liked the characters more than I thought I would. But I kind of wish that they had done more with the antagonists. I think that antagonists in Grand Theft Auto have kind of historically been kind of weak. And this one, I really hated the antagonists, and I thought that they didn't really pose a good reason as to why you're not able to shoot them earlier. Like, they're not...
Yeah.
They're not
I
nebulous
completely agree
enough.
with that.
Like, because they're there, like in Grand Theft Auto 4, there was like the looming threat of Bulgarin. And Nico was kind of obsessed with hunting down, the other child soldiers, or the one child soldier that had betrayed his crew, and kind of like tying up loose ends. And there was like that looming threat of Bulgarin to the east. And I thought that worked a lot better than having Devin out in the field, because Devin in this and God, what's his name, the FIB agent. I just didn't understand why I couldn't kill them.
Stevie, whatever the fuck his name is.
Yeah, I didn't get why I couldn't just kill them. There were plenty of times where I had the opportunity. So there was kind of like this weirdness to where it was like I was going along, but I'm like, it feels like Trevor would just kill these guys.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. They're they're not threatening at all. Devin, actually, I literally just compared him to Brucey when I was playing the game. Like, that's how unthreatening he comes off. And honestly, in the beginning of it, he's a dick. But he didn't strike me as honestly bad guy material. And then just like near the end, they're kind of like, hey, he's a dude that you're gonna, not like. He just didn't. He
didn't
make
asshole.
much sense.
You just like him by the end of the game, but the same thing with, as you said, I guess his name's Stevie, the FIB agent, where it's like, this guy's a douchebag. I'm going to relish in pumping him full of lead. But they didn't really like give a good reason as to why I couldn't. I guess there was kind of like, oh well, you're gonna get, the police will be after you, as if that stopped me from doing anything in that entire game before. Then let's see. I don't know. Without that kind of threat, it felt like the plot didn't have much to it. Like, it didn't have as much oomph. But I enjoyed it. I love the fact that they focused on bank robberies and just heists in general. I thought that was brilliant for an open world game, and it was perfect. So I think the individual missions were they kind of ran the gamut, but the highs were so outstandingly high. It kind of rivaled an Uncharted like experience at times.
Mm-hmm.
To where
the escapes that you made during the heist were a lot more in depth than I honestly thought they would be.
Oh Jesus!
The very first one, the jewelry heist, when you go through the tunnels on the motorcycle, that was way different than I thought how that would go. I just expected you had to get on the bikes, just outrun the cops like any other GTA game, and that's just what you would have to do. But they literally took the bank robbery mission from GTA 4 and just made a bunch of missions around that kind of open structure, at least seemingly open structure, where you kind of go everywhere.
Which is smart. I think that what's the mission called? Was it 4-Leaf Clover or something like that?
Yeah, 4-Leaf Clover.
I think that was the standout mission of GTA 4. So I thought it was really great that they kind of like reproduced that like 4 or 5 times in this. And yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a fantastic game. I've got very little complaints. I wish that they had kind of matched the intensity of a bad guy that they had kind of in Red Dead Redemption, to where. Mm-hmm. But I guess that's such a different game tonally.
You know what? I kind of have a theory about the villain of the game. I think that Trevor was initially supposed to be a villain. I really do. And I think that they liked the character so much that they just made him a playable character and changed kind of the way that story would go down with him. Because he's honestly, in the game, he's the only real threatening person that you deal with, but you play him. So it's different. I think that he was the only character. He's the only character in the game that I actually thought was going to be the real bad guy at the end of it.
I think they wound up liking him too much.
They just liked him too much. And what's not to like about the character?
I don't know. It's weird. There's an internet backlash, at least with some, to where it's like I see some. I don't know. I guess this is a difference of opinion. So not to insult character, but it seems like there's some very sensitive people that are playing this, and a lot of people are disturbed by the actions that Trevor takes part in. And for me, with Grand Theft Auto, one of the things that separates it from like a Red Dead Redemption, which I think was I mean, you killed a lot of people in Red Dead Redemption, but there was a certain physicality and like a natural aspect to the world and the acting that was kind of subdued. And I don't know, you felt more mortal in that. So, I guess the violence in that was kind of more striking than Grand Theft Auto, even though Grand Theft Auto is far more extreme. I see Grand Theft Auto as like a cartoon.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that. I mean, Red Dead Redemption is set in a time period and it doesn't mess with that time period, but it's set in a time period that people understand through pop culture and historical referencing as being extremely violent, extremely terse, and you just didn't mess around back then. So to have, this very, very much this black and white aspect to it in Red Dead was not surprising to people. But to play Grand Theft Auto, where it's not uncommon for a player to go pick up a prostitute, get a blowjob, then blow her head open with a shotgun afterwards, is much different.
I never actually did that in my entire time playing this.
No, I never did that either. I think that's I did that in the previous releases when I was much younger. Yeah. I was younger, but as I've grown up, for me, I'm more interested in the storyline. I understand people playing Trevor, and they're like, oh God, he just does. They become offended by him, but that's the point of his character. He is the exact idea. He is the idiom of people who grew up with the series, of things that they would do in the game. And honestly, people shouldn't be that offended by it. He's a schizophrenic sociopath. What else do you expect him to do?
And a meth addict.
And a meth addict, yes. Like, what else do you expect him to do? If anybody who has ever watched Breaking Bad, and at this point the show's over, I don't care so much about spoiling it. I'm not spoiling the ending. No. I'm not spoiling the ending. I'm spoiling like one episode in the middle of like season 2. Like it was kind of random. But there's an episode where Jesse comes across to meth head, like the meth head family or whatever. I don't expect them to behave any differently than they portrayed them to act. And it's the same thing with Trevor. He's that kind of person. I don't expect him to act any different than the way his personality is portrayed. It's not surprising. I'm a different kind of person. I like dark humor. I'm going to laugh at the fact that I'm going to pick up Trevor randomly and he'll be under the dock at the Vespucci Beach, as they call it, which would be Venice Beach in real life, but Vespucci Beach. And he's tied up a suit to a dock pillar and put a grenade in his mouth and walked off and just said, welcome to, he's like, this is what you get for your way you put the economy, sir. And he walks off. I laugh at that because I hate the current, I'm a political individual and I do read that kind of stuff. So I find it funny when things, when they have the dark humor like that. But other people will look at it and be like, oh God, why would he do that?
Yeah. Well, it was very offended by his actions, and especially the torture scene, which I kind of, I don't know, the whole game is so satirical.
Yeah, the thing about that scene though,
it's an anti-torture scene.
It's an anti-torture scene. Yeah, I played it and I did not enjoy it. I think a lot of people, and the people who I'm speaking of are the people that don't actually play the game. We know who those people are. They'll immediately look at it and see it only in one direction. They haven't played it. Trevor's character does these things, but he has this moment of clarity at the end of the mission where he's like, why, it doesn't work. He just did it because he was a sociopath. His character's sociopathic and he enjoys hurting people. But his actual idea of torture in his somewhat sane part of his brain knows it doesn't work and is stupid to do. He's just sociopathic and enjoys hurting people.
Yeah. Well, and he's, he's not just Well, I don't know if he's necessarily sociopathic. I think he's got sociopathic tendencies, but he's psychopathic to where it's kind of like his empathy's like fucking all over the place. To where it's like all of a sudden he...
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like
he's schizophrenic.
He's got an ideology to where he's so anti-America in it, or at least anti-establishment, that immediately he sees this as a way to get back at the establishment for making him do it, and that he's not the bad guy. The establishment that made him do it is the bad guy. So yeah, he's kind of like telling this guy, run, spread the word of the horrors of America. And
yeah,
that fits
he takes
his character.
Him to the airport.
Yeah. And I don't know.
It was so funny.
I didn't find anything in that game disturbing or shocking, and it could be that I've played a lot of games, and I'm very desensitized. So occasionally there will be something to where I'm taken aback by it, but I'm very rarely. I'm not disgusted. I'm not. Nothing in this surprised me or was out of character for Grand Theft Auto. It was nothing unexpected.
Yeah.
So, you know, when each one of those scenes is kind of like, what the hell is Rockstar doing? They're very on the nose. Like, they're not subtle at all. They're not trying to be subtle. You know, they're really not being super smart with Grand Theft Auto or their satire. But that kind of like plays into like the comic book or cartoon aspect of the whole series, and I think that kind of makes it enjoyable, because if it was dark, if it was more like a Red Dead Redemption, then I could see to where it's like that scene would be rough for some people.
Oh yeah, I don't think the game would have come out had it been more on the realistic side. I mean, come on, people, you can fucking hijack a helicopter with missiles and then jump out of it on top of a mountain with a parachute and ride a mountain bike down it. I mean, come on, you don't do like these things are crazy. These things are crazy.
But I guess to wrap up single player, I really loved it. I love the side missions. I love the strangers and freaks. I love the heists.
Those are some of my favorite parts of the strangers and freaks.
Yeah. Yeah, some of those are fantastic. I love how they brought back some of the stuff from Red Dead Redemption, like the manhunt missions that Trevor can get.
Oh, they took from all their games. That was one really cool thing about the game when I played it. You know, we're probably gonna stay on single player a little bit longer. We need to, but one cool thing I liked was they take from Smuggler's Run. It was the most random like Rockstar game. But Trevor's smuggling missions are Smuggler's Run. The vehicle you use, the way you play them, like you just run it. Like they even make the game like any other mission in the game. You would have to get out of your car to go pick something up. In those missions specifically, to pick up the packages, you just drive over them. Like they specifically made it like Smuggler's Run. It wasn't just some like one-off thing I played and I'm like, oh, this is like Smuggler's Run. Like it literally is Smuggler's Run. And they like the shooting mechanics are straight out of Max Payne. The same, that the physics, the way that they react to the bullets, straight out of Max Payne.
I wish the manual aim was a little better, though.
I agree. I don't like the crosshair. You can change the crosshair, but the one you change it to is still not the greatest.
It looks like Half-Life 2's.
Yeah.
When you change it.
Yeah.
But I don't know, there was just something about the movement of the guns.
Loose. Yeah, for me it's too loose. Yeah, it's just, you're kind of all over the place when you move the stick around. And I really, in defense of the game, I haven't really messed with sensitivity settings, so that could just be me just not changing this to attune properly.
I think that game is just built so much to where it's like they needed to kind of emphasize the lock-on targeting, to where it's like you could do the manual aiming, and it wouldn't be a terrible experience. I don't think that's the right way to play the game. I think the manual targeting, or the auto targeting, that really helps with a lot of what's going on. Like, it's usually really high speed. There's a lot of stuff going on. You know, you're capping people inside of vehicles or inside of like a helicopter or something. You need to have like a real snappy nature to bounce back and forth.
Yeah. And the way that the combat, it's very frantic and quick, but also there's a lot of verticality that comes into some of the situations that you find yourself in. And you're not always, the map is not very good at telling you, if something is above you or below you. Like, it'll flash that arrow on the dot, but in the heat of it, you're not going to pay attention to that. So to have something that will snap you to a quick enemy is very, very good. And I commend them for also making the targeting system the best in the series, because that has been a matter of contention, or a very, not contention is not the right word, but a very negative point in the series since 3.
It's been a pain in the ass. And especially coming off of 4, which I recently played through again, or the stories in that is the amount of bullets that enemies take.
Oh, God. They never die.
Yeah, and in this, it's much smoother. Like, it plays like they really went through and rebalanced that. So I don't think it's not like a real skill-oriented game. It's a very easy game to breeze through, and I think it kind of needed to be in a way. Because I don't think that their combat design really facilitates having like a really dynamic, challenging field of combat. I think you would be overwhelmed, especially with how fragile your characters are. To where I think that the way it plays is right, and that means that the gunplay is not as good as like a Max Payne. But mechanically it takes a lot from that, especially the way enemies react and the speed at which they go down, which is satisfying, as opposed to frustrating.
Yeah, it's incredibly engrossing single player game that I was very much surprised.
How long
with.
did it take you?
I've beaten Vice City. I've beaten 4. 35 hours.
Nice.
35 hours. If some people, they say it takes them 60 hours, mostly because they like to do the side quests, which, the side quests are plentiful. They are very interesting. They're not stupid. And then the random things you come across are interesting. Whether it's you randomly come across a guy who's stealing a bike, and then for me, it was funny. I decided to go ahead and, every time that happens, I'm like, well, if I'm playing Trevor in his weird, idealistic ways, and the certain part of his brain where he sees good, he would run that biker down with his car, because that's the most efficient way he would think to do it, and then take the bike back to the lady. So there's things that you can do that are just the amount of the things that happen, things you do. It can take somebody very much over 40 hours to complete the game.
Yeah, I think I was around 40.
It is a game that has almost too much content. It's almost too much. Almost too much.
You get a lot for your money. So,
yes.
And kind of like continuing with getting a whole lot for your money, GTA Online went live. I have not played it as much as you, so
I don't think a lot of people have played it as much as me for various reasons.
I mean, I get frustrated easily when it's like, I can't connect to something, or to where it's like there are technical issues. That's kind of like I just go, fuck it,
Yeah, if it's taking up too much of your time to try and play it, just wait and then play it when it's actually playable. Which today, and for the past 4 days, I have played it without any issues at all. Which I commend Rockstar for being quick on fixing things. In the scheme of how bad it was when it started, they turned things around rather quickly. GTA Online, when it came out, hit, I think, 15 million people were trying to get onto their servers at one time, which is unheard of. Which is pretty much unheard of for a game. A lot of people talk about, GTA is one of the worst launches in history, but I'm like, the thing is, I don't know a multiplayer game that has been hit that hard on day one outside of like games like Call of Duty. And actually, I can't count Call of Duty because GTA had the sales numbers that Call of Duty had. And what Call of Duty did in 15 days, it did in 3. It did over that in 3. So the amount of people that were already ready and prepped to play online was already astronomically higher than a Call of Duty game. So again, I don't think that there's a launch of a game that has come out that has had that many people playing it on day one.
Plus, you had leaks in advance to where it's like people kind of filtered into the Call of Duty Online stuff, and they got hit at midnight, but they didn't already have like an established player base waiting to download something, and then immediately all hit the servers at once. Like GTA Online did.
Yeah.
So
it was not anything that they could have prepared for. So for the people that listen to this and they're like, "It's the worst launch ever," whatever, like do actual research before you start throwing out these kind of opinions, because they're not real opinions.
I don't think Rockstar can like wash their hands of it. Like I don't think that they I expected issues. But days and days of lingering issues, especially with stuff to where it's like I didn't use it, but I know the iFruit app was down. To where it's just all aspects of the connectivity have had issues.
Yeah, that was one aspect of the issues that didn't make any sense to me, because the app itself doesn't really do a lot. For people who don't know what it does, it allows you to train Chop the dog, who's a Rottweiler that the main character Franklin has, and it allows you to customize your cars that you have in GTA Online. Which is cool, but the functionalities that it gave you were not so. I didn't feel like they were so server heavy that they should crash anything, but they did. The social club went down when that came out. A lot of shit just went awry for them.
I think it's just an economical thing, right? So it's like they made a lot of money. But it's like at the end of the day, their prerogative is to make more money, and yes. I think that. I'm sure that while not everybody at Rockstar gives that much of a shit about having that high of a bottom line, that there are plenty of people that wanted to scale the service back to what would be closer towards the minimum of what they thought would be okay for this launch. And I think that once it went awry, that's when they acted. So I don't think that they put in the infrastructure that was necessary. I think that they really want to do the minimum for what will keep this running smoothly, and then not do anything more than that, because that saves them a lot of money in the long run. And that's,
But again, I don't think they could have prepared. I don't think they could have given themselves the infrastructure needed for this. I just don't. They knew that the game was going to be popular, but to sell over $1 billion in 3 days is unheard of. I mean, the game has already surpassed lifetime sales of Grand Theft Auto 4 in the UK. I mean, holy crap. Lifetime sales. The game has been out for over 5 years? Grand Theft Auto 4?
Mm-hmm.
And it's surpassed those lifetime sales already.
It's pretty crazy.
This game's been out for less than a month. So, I don't think it was possible. But anyway, they got past the problems. I've started to play it. I've put in probably 15 hours into the game, and I've tried to do literally anything and everything you possibly can do in the game, which I feel like I haven't even hit 25-40%, like between 20 and 40% is not even a number I've hit.
Yeah.
I probably hit like 15-20% of the things you can do.
Since then that makes you kind of essentially like the Black Social Spudsman of GTA, then let me ask you a question.
Yes.
How detailed do the missions get as you go along? Do they get like a heist in single player?
They haven't put heists in the game yet. That'll be a addition later, which is probably a good thing, seeing as the problems they had initially. I think also the heists are much higher ranked missions, but definitely the missions as I've been going on have become a little more in depth and interesting. Like the characters from the single player show up. There's a few that are original to online mode. The very first guy, like the first missions you do for Simeon, who is the asshole Middle Eastern car dealership owner, are kind of boring. They don't really change. And the same thing goes for Gerald, or G as he's known, Lamar's friend. They're pretty much go to this point, pick up drugs, bring them back to me. And the same thing with Simeon. It's like, hey, blow up these cars or bring these cars and take them back to me. So they're not interesting. But eventually you open up stuff that goes with Lester and Trevor. And yes, Trevor shows up in the online and he's fucking hilarious still. And those missions are more interesting, and they're also a lot more difficult. And some of them still follow the gamut of, hey, pick this up, bring it back to me, but what you have to do to get those is a lot more intense and difficult than the other ones, so they're much more fun. But the mission structure is not honestly what makes that game so much, the online portion, so interesting. What honestly makes it so interesting is the free play functions, the free roam stuff. They give you a lot. I haven't seen all of it, but as you go through, depending on who you have jobs to do with, Simeon will like give you a text, and in the open world, you have to go find a car, pick up that car, and go bring it to him. And then if you're Trevor, if you stumble across illegal goods, you can bring them to Trevor. I haven't seen these things yet, but he's told me, hey, if you come across this stuff, give it to me. And then sometimes the game will randomly spawn this super expensive rare car that everyone sees on the map, and everyone goes for it to try and pick it up. And it becomes this rat race to get this car, and then it's a mad dash for survival to bring it in to sell it, which is crazy. The game is okay. The biggest problem people have with the free roam is that everyone kills everybody, and this is true. Everyone kills everybody. If you go online and expect to survive, the only way to do so is either put on passive mode or just stay away from everybody. If you want to get stuck, or kill them. The fun part about the game, and this is what I've been doing, is you will get bounties put on your head, or vice versa. Other players will have bounties put on their head. This part of the game, this aspect of the free roam, to me is the most interesting, entertaining part of the free roam. When a bounty gets put on your head or on a player's head, they are highlighted red on the map, no matter where they are. Now, you have the ability to escape. and survive. Eventually, the longer you go without being tracked or found by a player, you disappear from the minimap. And then you have to run into another player, or another player has to become within a certain vicinity to find you again, and you become highlighted, and that bounty will stay on you. Now, if you survive the whole day, which is 30 minutes with the bounty on your head, you get that money. So if someone puts a $9,000 bounty on your head, you survive it, you will get $9,000, which is not chump change in that game. $9,000 is a lot in the online portion.
Yeah, property begins at what, like $80,000?
Yeah, the apartment that I bought, which took me forever, but I bought the $200,000 apartment with a 10-car garage. I wanted to get one that had like a lot of car space, because the real aspect of the game that I wanted to buy like the super expensive cars and mod them out, which will take forever for me to do. But that's the main goal of me playing the online for. But anyway, the situations that arise from having bounties put on your head are some of the most intense situations I've ever been in a multiplayer game. I mean, like I said, Last of Us was my favorite multiplayer game until I played this, and I pretty much thought this is what it was going to be like, but it honestly has surpassed a lot of like what my wildest dreams were for the multiplayer of a GTA game. Like, there's been free roam in GTA 4, but it wasn't like this kind of MMO-y feel. And while it's only 16 people in the map, it doesn't need to be any more than that. And it's a ton of fun. It's so much fun to just like to try and find these cars for Simi, and all of a sudden you'll have like this random player come up on your tail, and you like scope each other out, like honk horns, randomly like flick each other off. And then it becomes it's like this Mexican standoff of nobody doing anything. And then either you will drive off, complete what you're doing, and he'll either follow you and you go like just freaked out. And then you'll come out of your car and like mow him down, or he'll mow you down if you weren't quick enough or something. Like, these moments that happen are just awesome. Sometimes you'll randomly run into players who are nice and they'll help you out with what you're doing, and then you can backstab them later, or they'll backstab you later. You can never trust anybody in the game, and then the moments that you have to trust them, it's just this uneasy trust, and it's cool. Yeah, one issue I have
with DayZ in that aspect.
Yeah, it's very much Grand Theft Auto DayZ. The one issue I have with it is I wish there was a way to mute everybody quickly. You can mute individual people, but the game doesn't do a vicinity-based voice chat. It's all just anybody who's in that room in that 16-player game, and the city is talking. So,
I wonder if it's worse since we're on PlayStation 3 as well, because
it probably is.
The games I've jumped into, people are just so fucking irritating.
Yes. Some people are not irritating. Some people are. I've met some cool people in the online, but
I think it's
some
just
people
the
are
headset.
super irritating.
Like, since most people are using like a little Bluetooth headset, like I'm guessing most people will grab like a little fucking $15 Mad Catz Bluetooth headset and then use it. And I don't know, you get a lot of TV noise. You get a lot of most games that I played anyway, and my experience is nowhere near as much as yours with the online. So take that for what it is.
You can mute them though, but it's the process to do it is a lot more involved than it should be. I
just feel like this is almost something to where it's like the multiplayer mode would have benefited from having the packed in headset that the Xbox 360 had, and that kind of the player base of that is more vocal than the PlayStation 3 player base, to where it's like not just higher quality sound, but more players communicating and talking smack. Because I don't get that as much in the PlayStation 3, so maybe that's.
Yeah, most of the smack talking and things that I've seen have come across in the races. And the races this game is probably my favorite racing game.
Wow.
Which is, it's insane. This game is probably my favorite racing game. Just because the racetracks that you put on, the amount of choices you have for whether it's like traffic, rain, night or day, the type of vehicles that people use, whether they can use custom modded vehicles, whether they can use whether you can use guns, whether you can do point-to-point races, lap races, whether it can be GTA races, which are when you can get like Mario Kart power-ups in the game. The amount of choice that you have is, for the kind of game that it is rather astronomical. I was not expecting the amount of customization that you have. The customization is not so crazy in depth that you would have in other racing games. But the fact that it even has the level of customization that it does have is very, very surprising. And it's a hell of a lot of fun to play it. I enjoy like playing tennis with a random person. The tennis is fun, and that's
I
just
played that
cool.
in single player, and I kind of enjoyed it. I don't know if I can go back and do it again. But...
Well, the playing it in multiplayer is a lot more interesting, just because you're playing with another person rather than the AI. Like when I was playing in the single player, like you can really fuck with the AI, but like playing the game in the multiplayer version of it with another person is a lot more involved and a lot more compelling. Definitely the same thing with the golf.
Does it instance you off when you start a minigame like that? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes,
see, I was
it
kind of
instances
hoping
you
of
off.
having like a scenario to where it's like you're playing tennis and somebody strafes you in a Harrier jet.
And somebody just comes over and shoots you. Yeah, that's I was I thought that it would be like that, but
that's my
it's
kind
not.
of tennis.
I've played a few matches and it does not. You get instance off. You don't have to worry about that. One thing that was cool too, when you buy an apartment, the apartment is not instanced from the game world, so you can look outside your apartment window and see other players running around. They can shoot at your windows. I believe they can. And you can the TV in your apartment is attached to security cameras, so if people are ringing your doorbell to try and come in, you can see who they are. Which I've escaped bounties by going into my apartment and there's like 5 people outside my door waiting to shoot me, so I can just go to my security cameras and watch them ring my doorbell repeatedly, which is funny. Which is super
funny. But they can't
funny.
get down the door, like blow out the windows and climb in.
Yeah. To surmise like the multiplayer, there's no other multiplayer game I've ever played, or probably will ever play for a long time, that allows me to steal a car, sell it, immediately go into a death match on top of a construction, like on the construction tower, then from there do a bike race over Mount Chiliad, then to land into a ski race in the next instance, and then from the ski race do some skydiving off of the Maze Bank Tower in the middle of the city, to doing playing darts. Like there's the variety is insane.
Now is that you just going from point to point,
insane.
or is that like a mission prompt? Because I saw those to where it's just kind of like, hey, do you want to join so and so on this mission?
Well, you can do. Yeah, you can. You're invited. I don't really like the way they do the matchmaking. I think that the matchmaking is kind of shitty. The way that it works is you invite people. If you do auto invite, what it does is whoever joins the game, it will start inviting that person's crews and his friends. So it becomes this giant snowball experience in terms of the way it invites people. But it's slow. I've honestly never experienced a game where it can take 5 minutes to get a game going. Sometimes for things that you would feel like, okay, it's a team deathmatch in like one of the highest rated maps in the game, you'd think people would just be joining left and right, but the way that it does its matchmaking is kind of weird. It does do really smart things where you can pull up the overhead map from the start menu and just highlight a mission and go into it. You don't have to drive all the way to the ring of where it is to join
awesome.
it. You can just find it on the map and be like, hey, I want to play that. So you can start hosting a game or joining a game in that mission. But there's no like easy way to join your friends. There's no easy way to get a team together, it seems, outside of your crews. But I mean, the amount of fun that I've had, it didn't really bother me too much. Because again, like the amount of fun I've had is just a
crazy.
Sheer variety. It's crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the fact that it works right now. I haven't had any server problems. I haven't had my character deleting, which has been a problem it happened to me. I lost my level 16 guy. Completely lost him. I didn't lose my money, which is weird, but it's cloud server problems, which is ironic that they have a joke in the single player that bashes cloud servers in gaming, and that they use cloud servers and the cloud servers broke when they started using them for the online, which I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, jokes on them.
Oh man, that sucks for people.
But yeah, but it doesn't. The ranking system of the game, what you unlock doesn't really matter that much. It's more just about the money you make, and you can make money pretty quickly if you play diligently enough. You make most of the money through doing the missions, but you can make You can make some crazy money doing some certain types, like survival, which is horde mode, where you fight a bunch of redneck meth heads or security agents or police, just depending on where you are. Like you make that, it's like 10 waves. If you beat the 10 waves, you win. But like if you make it to wave 10 and then die, you get like $18,000 from just making it that far. Like you can make a lot of money on certain missions.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's very much worth the playtime. It's stupid fun. Fun.
It's like one of the things that I didn't really like is like the shooting in Grand Theft Auto, right? Like I get it mechanically, like why it exists, but my experience with like the deathmatch games that I played in GTA Online were that I don't know, it's very different. Like I know that you can switch it to manual, and that will lock you in with other people with who are also using manual. That I've heard. Like I don't know if
you
that's...
can. Okay. You can.
See, I didn't like the manual aiming in the game, so I wouldn't use that. So instead, I'm using kind of like that standard, which has the lock on, and then doing multiplayer with that. Like just, I don't know, I don't really want to do a deathmatch. I want to have the free roam, where it's like those little activities don't really do much for me unless it's more like a heist.
Yeah, I'm like, I give the death matches as an example. I don't play them very much. I like doing the missions, the co-op stuff with the survival mode. I love the races. God, I love the races. I love the parachuting.
Well, the driving's pretty sweet in that game.
Yeah, I mean, the driving's just really good. The deathmatch modes, they're fun, but they're not as endearing as other kind of, deathmatch modes in other games. It's not going to be, it's not a fucking Halo killer. It's not a Call of Duty game. Yeah. It's, you go from cover and you see a dude and you pull out and you do like an auto target and you can shoot him. Now, granted, the auto target's not perfect, so you have to. It will aim for the chest. You can aim up and get headshots. And if the other person is better at doing that, they'll kill you quicker. There's still a skill-based element to the targeting, but it does most of the time boil down to he who targets the other first and shoots first wins.
Okay.
But it sometimes they're very fun. Most of the fun of the death matches for me comes in the places you do them in. Again, like my favorite death match I've done is in a power power plant. Very multi-leveled, cool environment. And I played it with like the full 16 players. That was really fun. But it was only fun because it was a cool environment to play in. The shooting mechanics aren't the most endearing, involved
I didn't think
thing.
they were bad. It just wasn't like super conducive to like getting me into that style of play. While killing people in free roam and kind of having that spur of the moment shootout, that's pretty sweet. Initially the progression hasn't hooked me. I need to play it more, of course. So that could get its hooks in me. But I really just like dicking around in the open world, and I loved it when we were able to just like set a waypoint and go like, okay, we're racing here, and then just spur the moment to go do that. And that was like the coolest part. But it's like the individual elements outside the racing, which sounds legitimately fucking awesome. But like the individual elements, like going and like getting drugs from NPCs and then bringing it back, that's not super exciting for me. I guess that could be kind of cool, but I like having a slight interacting with the other players. Like if I'm online, I don't really want to do co-op so much in that. It's kind of weird. I
mean, and the stuff you can do in that game is crazy. It's, an example of things that happen in free roam. I chased a guy who had a bounty on his head, and he was on a dirt bike. He took a ramp onto a train and got away on a train. I could not catch him. He got away on a train.
Mission in single player.
Yeah,
that's
like
awesome.
the mission single player. He literally hit a ramp on a dirt bike and landed on a train. The train just happened to be there, and it took him away, and I lost him. Completely lost him. I tried to get him.
His ass off.
Oh, he was probably laughing his ass off. I've seen another video where a guy tried to do that, but then the car followed him in the ramp, and the car squished him when the car landed on the train. So like, things like that happen, and it's just it's so crazy. It's just
that's
so
like
crazy.
the best part. Not like the organized matches, but just kind of the chaos. That's something I really liked with Grand Theft Auto 4's multiplayer too. So it's kind of like I like the basics of it.
Yeah,
like I like the spur of the moment shit, and yet they've added all these elements to the side to where it's like these little activities that you can go and do, and because the money payout, that kind of spurs you to get that kind of variety in. When it's like the stuff that doesn't pay much, that just the open world chaos is what I would be most interested in personally. So you're making me really want to play this more.
It's a lot of fun. 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 I was trying to think of some other just fun examples of crazy things happening. I don't. There's not too many that are just popping off the top of my head right now. I don't know why, but
I would talk about my experiences, but I'm such an asshole when I play online. I am one of those fucking sharks that's just roaming around trying to.
It's Grand Theft
people.
Auto. Yeah, it's Grand Theft Auto. It happens. That's just the way the game is.
Yeah.
So it's not that. I don't get bothered that much by like people coming and killing me because for me I expect it. So every time I see a guy coming like near me on the screen, I'm like, okay, I gotta see. I'm gonna drive around the block a few times, see if he's following me. Okay, he's following me. He's coming after me. What am I gonna do? And so then it becomes this fun like cat and mouse thinking ahead of the guy moment in the gameplay. Just the on the fly stuff that happens is the best stuff. Yeah.
So Grand Theft Auto, pretty good game, 7 out of 10.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty fucking great. It's pretty fucking great. As it stands on the whole, like the game in terms of content is way higher than any other game I've ever played. The depth of the content is way better than it should be for the amount that's in it.
Absolutely.
The attention to detail in that game is way higher than any game should be, especially one that it's a technical marvel the game runs.
Looks fucking gorgeous. And on PlayStation 3 at least, it's got a pretty stable frame rate considering what all it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have any issues actually with frame rate. I guess there were times where I noticed it slow down a bit, but no real performance issues.
Nothing really bad. I unfortunately am one of the individuals that has the PSN version that they love to hide the certain technical faults that it has from people who bought it until the day after it came out when people realized it had these problems. And they tried to cover their ass and say, well, we just, we'll do a better job of testing these games for it. And it's like, Rockstar knew about this. They just, they either told you and you didn't say anything because you didn't want to, your big, Grand Theft Auto 5 was the first game on their day one digital program. So to have that game be just have performance problems was not a good thing for them. So they didn't say anything about it. The performance issues it has they're not deal breaking for me at all. They are for some people though. The issues that are really the most prevalent are it has streaming problems because it's not splitting the data. The game usually has like an 8 gigabyte install, regardless of what system you're on, so it can take the data installs off from the RAM and data off the disk simultaneously, so it just loads quicker. Since I do not have that option, it has the problems that arise. Things just disappear. It becomes a game of, it looks like I'm driving on mud. It just looks like mud. And then randomly, all the textures are popping, and you're like, oh, okay, this is where I am.
That's a goddamn shame, because that's...
It doesn't happen very often. It usually only happens when you initially boot the game up, and when you're going really fast in cars. Like, you have to be in the fastest cars, and you have to be going at top speed. And that only happens later in the game. It usually is really only horrible during the first initial load. Once you're done with the initial load and you've been playing the game for like 5-10 minutes, it really doesn't do it. It really doesn't do it. But that initial, first couple moments, when you're like looking at the opening cutscene and all of a sudden you see palm trees popping in out of nowhere, and there's a video online of a guy flying a plane. And he has the PSN version, I'm guessing. A tree just pops in out of nowhere and crashes his plane. Like it literally does not exist until he runs into it, and then it just pops in as soon as he explodes. Sucks. So things like that happen.
So it's not super serious. It is just frustrating on the instances that it does occur.
Yeah, it's just sometimes frustrating. Okay. An example of it happening in the middle of a mission was when you do the mission where you save Michael's daughter from the porn people. And you drive through the tunnels on a jet ski. Most people just shoot the guys, whatever. But if you actually drive through the tunnels, the game has the worst loading problems at Vespucci Beach. I don't know why. I guess Vespucci Beach is probably the most detailed area of the game, in all honesty. Because of the amount of things it has to load.
Plus, it's loading the urban environment with the underwater. At the same time, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's the only reason I can think of it being so much of an issue and taxing on the system. During that mission, a lot of the tunnels just disappeared, and I had to rely on the map. And they'd pop in, and everything would be okay, and then sometimes they'd disappear again. It was the only period in the game when it actually became frustrating. And it didn't That's the only area of the game where I have that kind of issue, and it doesn't. And again, it's not so frequent that I'm going to tear my hair out. It's just enough to be a little niggling problem.
So
for me, I know for other people it's a much bigger issue, but for me it's not that big of a problem.
So would you double dip in the next 12 months if Grand Theft Auto 4 is re-released on PS4, PC?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, without a doubt. Just because the game is... I don't feel like even if I bought the normal edition of the game for the console, I don't even think I'd be seeing as much of the details like it has. So if PC release comes out, plus the PC release will be moddable. So the things that have happened with Grand Theft Auto 4
like
since that game was released on PC, there's just the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they modded into Grand Theft Auto 4 the character swapping of Grand Theft Auto 5 between the characters of the expansions. And
seriously, that's awesome.
So, like the modding community for that game is incredible. So I would love to buy the PC version and see the mods that they come out with. There was an Iron Man mod for 4 where you flew around in an Iron Man suit. I mean, there's just all kinds of shit.
All the ragdoll for that.
My favorite mod actually is they made the Back to the Future car, and it would literally, if you went at I can't remember the exact mile per hour, but if you actually reach that miles per hour, it will disappear into a burning trail of tire marks and go somewhere randomly in the future in the game world. So, like that was awesome.
So PC version.
Stuff like that, like I've totally. It will be out on PC. There's no way it won't be.
I was really hoping they would do day and day
way it won't be
for PC as well. You know, I was kind of let down when it was like, okay, it's coming to Xbox 360 and PS3 only.
The only reason it's not though is because the only reason it didn't is because that Sony and Xbox paid a boatload of cash to make that a timely exclusive for the consoles.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was probably initially tuned for those consoles as well, and I think probably closer to the end of the development cycle. Rumor is, scuttlebutt is they're porting it to PlayStation 4. So my guess is that since that's so close to PC architecture, they're just going to take essentially the PlayStation 4 version with like those higher res assets, like the untrimmed models, to where it's like when they first model everything and it's much more high res than. They whittle down the polygon count.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably going to have much more high res models, like closer to the initial ones in like PlayStation 4, and then they can just use all those assets again for PC. Because I mean, a lot of times the textures and stuff are pretty high res. It's within a bubble until you get to like the LOD stuff that's further out, and you won't have that so much in like PC or PlayStation 4 if it actually does port to that.
Yeah, it'll be quite pretty.
Gorgeous game.
Quite pretty. But yeah, buy it. Just go buy it. Be another person to add to the world-breaking take-in this game's having. Just go buy it.
It deserves all the hype that it's getting. I'm floored by the creation of this game. Like, I sound like I'm kind of complaining about the game and nitpicking it, but it's like genuinely it's one of the best games I've played this generation. It's phenomenal.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's
The only reason that I'm at all this nitpicky is because 2013 has been such a great year so far that it's actually got competition, even though it is this spectacular, which is crazy.
And it's funny that this year has so much competition that it's the last year that these are going to be like the important consoles.
Yeah, it bodes well for next gen, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely.
That open world rise. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big deal.
Okay.
Gonna be a big deal.
So I think that should do it for our podcast. I mean, we're at an hour and 50 minutes, which is pretty sizable for just you and I.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to call it. I don't really know what else to talk about. I guess to quickly talk about things we'd be talking about in the next episode. I guess Battlefield 4 is coming out. So
yeah, that'll be near that time. I mean, we'll probably schedule these things every 2 weeks, sometime early to mid in the week. And yeah, Battlefield 4 will be coming out. It won't be out by the time we record next. We'll be on the cusp of the release of Battlefield 4. And you and I have already played the beta quite a bit.
Yes, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the beta.
It needs some work.
I wish that, it's got its performance problems, but I know that they're very much a widespread thing, these performance problems. So people who do not have the performance issues, literally these people that have, the GTX Titans and i7s and super crazy big computers, but people even with rigs that should have no reason to have kind of weird stuttering problems are getting to stuttering problems. So
I think that's going to be a non-issue when it releases. I trust DICE when it comes to performance.
I do too. But anyway,
that'll be out. Hopefully the first single player portion of Arma 3 will be out. I'll probably be a little further in the end game of Final Fantasy XIV Realm Reborn, which I'm really enjoying. Though it's kind of lost me with the release of GTA 5, so I need to kind of refocus into that while I got the time to. And we're coming up on next gen consoles really fucking quick.
Yeah, man.
Month out.
Yeah.
So
I don't I want to try and work on this. I don't want to announce it, officially announce it, but I would love to kind of plan on having a launch day stream of one of the said consoles.
That would be awesome.
That's, something we can travel for and get to work. It'd be nice to,
tell you.
Unofficial announcement, people that are listening. It's unofficial announcement. Do not make dates on this, but it would probably be on the actual launch day.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. So it could be really, really fucking cool. All right, you got anything closing that you want to say before we tap out?
Hey, if you're on PlayStation, you want to find someone to play Grand Theft Auto Online with, just look up Brennan Hussung, BrenHussung. I do not mind giving out my username on that, and I will be more than happy to add you to the box social crew we have in the game and to do some random crazy shit. So, also buy the game if you don't have it, and then do that anyway. So.
All right. For me, we got a new website up. Check us out on boxsocial.squarespace.com. It's our new home on the web. You will be able to find all of our recordings, hopefully on iTunes. You'll probably be listening to this on YouTube, which is going to be kind of the backbone for our site going forward. So hopefully you guys will check us out. Tell us what you think about the site, and keep listening.